Welcome, ladies and gents, my name is Curci, and today I'm going to ask the question of, is the evil within good? The answer is yes. But I'm going to put a little star next to it because it's only for certain gamers. Somebody who's sitting there and saying to themselves, I just want to play a good game. Yeah, Evil Within is a good game, but it's probably not for you. It's not for the casual gamer. You want to know what the game is for? Survival horror fans. Fans of survival horror will find exactly what they are looking for in this game. The gameplay is just the best thing about the Evil Within. As far as the story goes, if you're looking for a story, you're not going to like the Evil Within because the story is all over the place. I use this phrase so many times in every video that I've done with Evil Within, but I'm going to use it again here. I felt like the story was regurgitated and whatever happened to come up is what they pieced together into the game. Early on, you play as a detective who is with his two other partners and a driver. The blandest characters in all of gaming. I have no idea what real purpose they served. They guess maybe they advanced the plot, whatever plot was there. You play as a detective named Sebastian, and he and his partners go to this hospital where there are reported murders, and you get there and the place is messed up. Bodies all over the place. It's really just unnerving to see. And then bad things happen. That's essentially how the game made me feel. Like, they really weren't just saying, okay, this is how it slowly starts up. It just, bad things, here you go. Like, they just threw it at me. All of a sudden, I was captured. Then I'm going through being chased by this dude with a chainsaw. By the way, characters with chainsaws, if you want to scare me, that's how you do it. If you want to build tension with me, that's how you do it. I hate video games that have enemies with chainsaws. And the Evil Within is no different. The guy who has the chainsaw, who appears more than once, freaked me the hell out. And I don't like guys with chainsaws. Just stop it. Or continue it. If you want to get the response you want, you got it with me because you included the chainsaw guy. The game had a lot of really tense moments, but that's all really written off to the gameplay side. We're talking about the story side. And for the first half of the game, you're being literally teleported across all over the place. In one section, you're with your friends, and now you're in the sewer separated from your friends. Then you meet up with your friends again. Then you get separated from them, still in the sewer. Then you meet up with more friends, and then get separated from them. That's literally how the game plays out. You're going to find your friends. You're trying to figure out what's going on, but the story isn't really addressing what's going on. The game just keeps reminding you that it has no idea what's going on. Yeah, you built the mystery great, but you should have started giving answers, or at least started addressing the story a little bit earlier than more than halfway through the game. Because when they finally started addressing him, when they started adding backstory to the villain, Ruvik is a great villain. He's the only good character, at least that I felt, that was in this game. The backstory behind him is essentially your traditional bad guy origin story where he's the little kid that kind of like experiments and kills animals. And then as an adult, he's even more messed up and now he's got this god complex. I'm not going to spoil the story, although there really isn't one to spoil. But I'm not going to be that guy that deems the story to not be worth trying to avoid spoilers. I'm just going to avoid spoilers. Either way, that guy was pretty good. But the game should have at least have started to address things a little bit earlier than when it actually did. Because by more than halfway through the game, I've already checked out when it comes to the story. I've accepted the fact that the game's just not going to explain things. Bad things are happening and that's all I need to know. Now I need to deal with it. I will admit, I was a little bit surprised when the story actually did start coming together, but then it drops off at the end because it has a super unsatisfying ending. Really anticlimactic, really confusing. It's either trying to set up for a sequel or it just really didn't care about its ending. I don't know what happened there, but it just, for me, it didn't do enough. I have no idea what happened at the end. I just left confused and I was like, so yeah, that was a game. So the story is all over the story's bad. The story in The Evil Within is bad. But does that make it a bad game? Well, if it had lackluster gameplay, then yes, it would be a bad game. But did it have lackluster gameplay? No, it didn't. The game had some missteps with its gameplay, like it was so good, and then it forgot what it was supposed to be, and it thought it was a different kind of game. The beginning of the game, you're acting really slow, you're kind of stealthing up, you're throwing distractions to attract the zombies to go somewhere else. And you're sneaking up behind them and killing them. Or if you have ammo, you're going for the leg, you're either going for the headshot. There are so many options with combat. It really makes you think before you start going about it. Every move is calculated risk. If you fire your gun, you're not only going to consume very valuable ammo, but you're going to run the risk of maybe an enemy is going to hear the shot. So most of the time, you're going slow. You're observing the field. I mean, the game is actually a lot like Limbo. If you're familiar with Limbo, you'll understand that sometimes you got to die in order to figure out the path forward. Because The Evil Within is, let's be honest, it is not a walk in the park. It's a little bit of a difficult game, and that's why I say that this game isn't for the casual gamer. But The Evil Within is a lot about going about an area, throwing a strategy up against the wall, seeing what sticks, and then just just going about it from there, building on your strategy, improvising. Go through a door, you'll see that there's an enemy, you hide under the bed, you wait for the guy to turn around, then you kill him, then you realize that he has a second buddy that comes up, and then he spots you and kills you. So now you know that when you go under the bed, you need to wait a little bit for that guy to come back, and then he goes away, then you can kill the guy. Every time I tackled a new area of the game, I was getting progressively, slowly, but still progressively further every attempt. Whereas I had an issue with these 3 guys in the courtyard, now I have an issue with just the 2 guys in the courtyard. Now I have an issue with just the 1, and now they're gone. It's a learning by doing kind of game, and it was definitely a game that I felt was challenging. It made me think, didn't make me just mindlessly blow the head off of zombies. Because one of the big things about survival horror is your resource management, making sure that you have enough med packs, that you have enough ammo stored up so that when stuff happens, you know how to deal with it. But all that strategy, all those decisions that you have to make really brings out the tenseness of this game. I will admit that during the beginning part of the game, the scare factor or the horror factor really didn't feel it for me. I didn't feel creeped out. I was just playing a video game. But when I hit the level where there was a catacombs and then I got introduced to a new type of enemy that was more like whiny rather than your traditional zombie noise, then I started getting a little creeped out because you hear those sounds and you're not really sure if there's an enemy around the corner or if that's just you in your head. You're just creeped out because you have no idea what you're walking into. It was good level design, and there are a lot of really good enemy designs as well. The enemies just look really good, especially some of the big notable enemies. I saw this one particular enemy design in the trailer. I saw this one particular enemy design in reviews, so I knew it was coming, but that lady with like the 4 arms that kind of crawls, she's got the long hair, she's all bloody. No thank you. It just, as soon as I saw it, I knew it was coming. I was like, but she was one of the many bosses in this game that were also really well thought out. I actually really liked the boss battles. Each individual boss battle I felt was its own very unique experience. Some bosses you just have to unload your ammo into him. Some of them you'll have to observe their behaviors. Maybe they'll turn invisible, stick up on a wall, and now you have to wait for the lesser enemies to spawn to figure out where he's hanging. Then go take him out and then wait for him to repeat the process. Some of you actually have to use the environment to your advantage. Not necessarily engage the enemy, but maybe like turn like release valves, open doors, just kind of get away from it. There's so much strategy, and it all just builds on that tenseness of the game. It's just, you know that it's around, you have to run over to this valve, open it, maybe you have to pull a lever to open a thing up to a furnace so that the enemy drops in. It's really tense, it's really creepy. The game just nailed the feeling at a certain point, and it wasn't even like it took too long to get scary. It probably would have been better suited if the scare factor, for me anyway, came in a little bit earlier. But did it tarnish my overall feeling for the game in terms of gameplay? No, not really. But earlier I said that the gameplay did kind of misstep. The game kind of forgot what it was supposed to be. The Evil Within is supposed to be a survival horror game. That gameplay, that slow approaches, that observing the environment and just throwing your strategy into it, seeing if that strategy works, that's the gameplay that I've come to love with The Evil Within. But there were times where the game thought it was an action game. And what that means is that in the beginning of the game really does a good job of teaching you to conserve ammo. And then they send waves of enemies at you. Now, all this ammo that you've been saving up, you start unloading into them. I think that maybe these sort of action sequences of waves upon waves of enemies coming at you was a little bit strategically placed, because if you did conserve ammo, you're going to be able to handle yourself pretty well, because enemies don't drop ammo very often, so don't expect them to drop ammo during these sequences. If they do, and they're fully capable of doing it, then get excited and throw a party. But they probably won't, so you got to deal with what you have. Were they necessarily bad sections? No, because they did help you, like, make sure that you always stored your ammo, because you never knew if you turn this corner, maybe there's going to be an action sequence. But did it also annoy me that the game kind of went that route with it? Because yeah, sometimes I didn't have ammo during those sequences, and what do you do in that situation? There was one moment where I had no ability of beating it other than just meleeing, and meleeing wasn't going to work. So I had to reload the entire chapter just so I knew how to conserve ammo. I was like scavenging the area, going into corners and places I didn't really necessarily go into at first, finding pieces of ammo, upgrading my stuff so that my ammo did more damage when I actually did use it. But that was only really one time that I ever had to reload an entire chapter, which honestly really wasn't that bad because the action sequence happened very early. So it was just, I had to walk to a lot of places, but I eventually got to the action sequence. Eventually the game was able to remember the fact that it is survival horror, and then it started going even slower. And by this point, the story was being implemented. Does the story hold up? No, because it's good, then it's bad again. But you're not playing The Evil Within for the story. If you're playing it for the gameplay. And in that respect, the gameplay it was very good. Yes, I do value story very highly. I don't value it higher than gameplay. As evidence of Sunset Overdrive, and soon I'm going to do a video on Shadow of Mordor. you're going to find out there that gameplay does definitely trump story in that regard. Even Titanfall. Titanfall was a game that trumped its story because it really didn't have a very good story, but the gameplay was just really good. I love story. When I play a game, I look for a good story. So when a game doesn't have a good story, it better have a good gameplay, but I do value gameplay above story. The Evil Within story was bad, but the game is still good because it had a really good gameplay mechanic. My final opinion, Evil Within is a good game, but not for everybody. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.